For privacy reasons, the names of individuals involved in this case have been changed. Stay tuned. On February 25, 1957, on a cold day in the Fox Chase Forest in Philadelphia, a college student was checking his traps when he found an old cardboard box thrown in the thick grass. At first, he thought it was just trash, but when he opened the lid, the sight before him left him speechless. A young boy, naked, curled up inside, his thin, pale body wrapped in an old, torn blanket. The boy's hair was cut awkwardly short, and there were bruises and surgical scars on his body. Afraid of being implicated, this person did not report to the police. A few days later, another person discovered the box. This time, he decided to report it. One of the most mysterious cases in American history had officially begun, where every unsolved mystery contains secrets that want to be revealed. Step into the darkness and explore them with us. Don't hesitate to leave a like as an encouragement for us, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to update the most classic cases. When the police arrived at the scene, they immediately realized that this was no ordinary death. Curled up inside an old cardboard box was the body of a skinny, naked boy in the freezing cold. His small face was pale, his eyes were closed, as if he was in a long sleep and would never wake up. The police quickly conducted a preliminary examination. The boy looked like a child between 4 and 6 years old, but he had no clothes, no identification, and no one knew who he was. The strange thing was that, despite being abandoned in harsh conditions, the boy showed signs that someone had cared for him. His fingernails and toenails were meticulously trimmed, unlike a child who had been abandoned for a long time. This showed that someone had cared for him, but for some reason, they no longer wanted him to exist. His body was frighteningly thin, as if he had endured starvation for a long time. Forensic doctors determined that the boy was severely malnourished, with an empty stomach, indicating that he may have been starved before he died. Bruises and surgical scars were scattered across his emaciated body. Some of the scars could have been from medical intervention, but the new bruises raised the question, what had he been through before he was abandoned here? The boy's hair was cut awkwardly short, with strands of hair still clinging to his scalp and body. This led the police to suspect that someone had deliberately changed his appearance to avoid recognition. The only clue at the scene was the cardboard box in which the boy had been placed. It had once contained a crib sold by J.C. Penney, but despite police efforts to trace it back to its source, they were unable to determine who had purchased it. Realizing the seriousness of the case, police launched a massive search operation, hoping someone would recognize the boy. More than 400,000 flyers bearing his picture were distributed throughout Philadelphia and surrounding states, appearing on bulletin boards at post offices and at police stations. But strangely, no one knew who the boy was, and there were no reports of missing children matching his description. The boy had no name, no identity, and no one was looking for him. It was as if he had never existed. The case shocked not only because of its brutality, but also because of the decades-long mystery. No one knew who the boy was, where he came from, or why he had been so cruelly abandoned. In an effort to solve the case, police and independent investigators considered many theories, but each clue only added to the confusion. One of the most haunting theories came from a witness who claimed that the boy may have been living in a secret orphanage where abandoned children are never recorded. According to the witness, such facilities exist outside the law, where unidentified children are kept in terrible conditions, abused, even trafficked or murdered without anyone knowing. This suspicion was reinforced when a local nurse came forward to police and said that she had seen a boy who looked very similar to the victim in a house near where the body was found. According to her, the family who lived there had strange behavior, and the boy she had seen always seemed scared and timid, as if he had been used to being abused. But when the police investigated the house, there was no evidence to convict, and the homeowner adamantly denied any involvement. The theory of a secret orphanage remains an unsolved mystery. 45 years after the case, in 2002, a woman named Martha suddenly gave a shocking testimony. According to her, the boy in the box was her adopted brother, a child that her mother had kidnapped and illegally raised for many years. Martha recounted that her mother was a cruel, violent woman who often beat the boy savagely. She never let the boy go outside, forced him to eat rice with his bare hands in the toilet, and treated him as a creature inferior to human. One day, because the boy soiled the bed sheets, she was angry and beat him to death. To cover up the evidence, she and Martha drove to a deserted area, put the boy's body in a box, and left it there, hoping that no one would find out his true identity. Martha's testimony matched many details in the case, but when the police searched for corroborating evidence, they found no trace linking her family to the victim. There were no missing person records, no medical records, no one to corroborate her story. Ultimately, this theory could not go any further, becoming one of countless haunting but never-ending testimonies. Some independent investigators believe the boy may have been the victim of a human trafficking ring. This theory is based on the fact that there are no missing person records matching the boy, which is extremely unusual. Normally, when a child goes missing, the parents or relatives will report it to the police, and even if no body is found, there will always be some trace. But in this case, no one has ever looked for the boy. This has led to suspicions that he may never have been officially registered or that he was taken from his family at a very young age. Police have investigated many possibilities, including that he may have been kidnapped from a faraway place and brought to Philadelphia through a human trafficking network, but none of the evidence is convincing enough. Every lead leads to a dead end. The case seemed to have been forgotten, a ghost haunting the history of American crime. But more than 6 decades later, in December 2022, a major breakthrough occurred. Thanks to genealogical DNA analysis technology, investigators traced the boy's genetic lineage, comparing the data with millions of DNA profiles across the United States. After months of analysis, they finally discovered the victim's true identity. His name is Joseph Augustus Sorelli, born in 1953. For the first time in 65 years, the boy in the box is no longer an anonymous soul. He has a name, a family, a real existence, and now the police are determined to find out who took his life. Police confirmed that Joseph's biological parents were both from Philadelphia and that they still had family members living there. However, the strange thing is that no one had ever reported him missing, and no one had come forward to look for him for all that time. Why did his family keep quiet? Did they know what had happened to him? Authorities have not released the identities of his biological parents for privacy reasons, but they admit that the case is still open. Although Joseph's identity has been determined, his killer has not been brought to light. Several theories continue to be raised. Were his parents involved in his death? If so, why weren't they investigated at the time? Was the boy murdered, and did his family cover up the crime? If so, who helped them keep the secret for 6 decades? Could Joseph have been kidnapped and murdered by a stranger? But if so, why wasn't his family reported missing? Although the boy's identity has been established, the biggest question remains unanswered: who killed him? 65 years after Joseph's tragic death, the truth is finally coming out, but the case remains unsolved. The killer may still be alive or may have escaped justice. Now, investigators continue to pursue new leads, interviewing Joseph's surviving relatives and examining old records. DNA technology has provided the first answer, but can it provide the final answer? Who killed the boy in the box? While the case remains unsolved, at least Joseph Augustus Sorelli is no longer a forgotten, anonymous soul. The boy finally has a name engraved on his tombstone after more than 6 decades of being remembered as a ghost in history. This is not only a brutal case, but also a haunting tragedy about forgotten children, little creatures deprived of the right to live, to be loved, and even the right to be remembered. For more than 6 decades, the boy in the box has been known only by a generic name, without family or relatives to identify him. He is the embodiment of thousands of missing, abused, and nameless children, children who have disappeared without anyone searching for them. If it weren't for DNA technology, perhaps the name Joseph Augustus Sorelli would be buried in the dark forever, with no one knowing he ever existed in this world. But finding his identity is only part of the story. Justice has not been served. Joseph's killer has not been caught. Those who know the truth remain silent. What has made them so afraid to speak out after all these years? The case is a painful reminder that some secrets are buried for too long, but no secret can stay hidden forever. DNA technology has provided the first answers, but the final answer remains elusive. Who killed Joseph? Will a witness who has remained silent for decades come forward to tell the truth? Will a seemingly meaningless clue from the past become the key that finally opens the door? More than 65 years later, one question remains unanswered: who took the boy's life? And when will justice be called for Joseph Augustus Sorelli? What do you think about this heartbreaking case? After more than 6 decades, the boy's identity has been established, but the killer remains a mystery. Do you have any guesses as to who was behind this crime? Do you think justice will be served after all these years? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this story and want to dive deeper into more intriguing mysteries, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.